Damn. Seuss. Good, man. Great. I know.
Yeah.
Always a best.
Okay, let's call the order of the January 29th, 2024 BOSAC meeting. Roll call, please, Ann.
Sure. Jeffrey Bergeron.
Here.
Kristen Joyce. Here. Chris Tennell.
Here.
Duke Barlow.
Here.
Nikki LaRochelle. Here. Bobby Zanka. Here. And David Rossi.
Here.
Great. Minutes. Discussion, approval of minutes.
So moved.
Yeah, great. Do we want to talk about abridging the minutes in the future?
We can quickly, although it does tie into our discussion about
Okay.
the BOSAC meeting date. If you want,
Okay, we can
wrap
wait
that
and do
in.
it then. Thanks,
Yeah.
Ann. Okay, wonderful to have a crowd. Thanks for coming. Does anybody have any non-agenda items they would like to comment on before we?
Yes, I do. My name is Drew Goldsmith. Prospect Road, slightly out of the town of Breckenridge. I have a couple of questions. I'm trying to do some research about taking up this time, but BOSAC funding for purchasing parcels of land comes from where predominantly?
Sales tax.
Sales taxes. Is that exclusively where it comes from?
Yes. So our 0.5% sales tax measure covers all of our open space program expenses, from acquisitions to wages to tools and everything in between.
Okay, and I apologize. I thought there was one like.
Hold on, Drew. Mark's got clarification.
There is one other source of revenue for that, and it's
Yeah, right. But like back in the day when there was like that 1A proposal to fund different government programs, that open space was not a beneficiary of that.
That's the county open space program.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. All right, so on joint ventures of town and county that purchases parcels for open space acquisitions, like for instance, Dry Gulch, that source of funding comes from one fund. There's only one source of fund that comes from the tax revenue and TDR transfers, correct?
From the town perspective, the county, I believe, has a different setup.
Yeah, right.
which-
So it's a little more
Mhm.
complicated. I guess, there's been a street beat, hearing about, the Little Daisy being purchased by Open Space, which is up Prospect Gulch Road. That may or may not be public knowledge, but it sure is on my road. I guess, what, back to the Dry Gulch conversation, what could Dry Gulch become that would not be open space? Could it become a town of Breckenridge trails hub for Tony to launch crews out of day to day?
I mean, in theory, yes, as long as it's an open space use, which we're still working on a management plan for that property. And the one thing that we are hoping to do is work with Breckenridge History on the buildings that are there.
Yeah, and I'm just playing hypotheticals here. But so it could be structures and activity really not meeting my definition of open space. Or even your definition of open space.
Not a nature preserve. Is that what you're thinking? It should.
Well, I don't know. I struggled a little bit for that too on BOSAC's website, looking for what the definition of open space is and looking at what the document guides it to be. And it does talk about, obviously not necessarily all pastures and vistas, but things that remained void of development is kind of what I interpret it to be. But in lieu of some of these more recent acquisitions, I'm just kind of begging the question of what becomes of those.
Well, for instance, we bought the Baccarat property. Right. Is it Baccarat on Tiger Road? Has a home on it. And home and actually a cabin. And we've kind of left that left that vacant and and the county uses that property for storage and for, so I mean, we've been flexible.
Where is that, Mr. Bertrand?
It's right before Dry Gulch and the Muggins Gulch. There's a cute little house that I think Robin Theobald's secretary's granddaughter lived in before we bought it.
That's not.
And
It's
it's,
the last house up on the right.
yeah. Yeah. So
And
we-
then, yeah, and to follow that on the other side, Drew, our open space funds have helped purchase Prospector Park, in-town playground as well. So there's a variety of uses that we've used space funds for.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of my comments and questions are coming out of curiosity. And change. And so I just was kind of wondering what the likelihood of those things in my mind happening out there and what I consider open space acquisitions, and not a traditional open space acquisition. Yeah, we've acquired this and we're not doing anything with it. What are the odds on that changing?
Well, yeah, and I think this is a little difficult conversation to have right now as well, Drew. And I know where you're coming from
Yeah,
and what you're saying, but at the same time, it's hard for us to discuss any of those details at this point.
Do is hear your concerns more specifically. If you want to share.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I am supportive of open space. I've contributed 8 mining claims to open space for free. It's nice to know they are open space. Little concerned that like the zoning, when something becomes open space property, the zoning on that doesn't change to NR1 or some neutral zoning with void of density. That seems odd to me. If you're gonna put your money where your mouth is and make something open space and do this altruistic deed of making it open space, why not memorialize that and make it NR1 zoning or a zoning that has no density? I don't think any of the properties that open space has acquired from my research have any change to the density, underlying density. Why?
The large percentage of the properties that we own as the town of Breck are jointly owned with Summit County, and most of those are outside of the town limits. So our town zoning doesn't apply, but county zoning does. And we do go through an exercise I feel like it's about every 10 years maybe, where we do rezone these open space properties. And we tend to rezone the ones that we know we're not going to perhaps exchange in the backcountry with the Forest Service, which is one of the other activities that we do.
Or TDR.
Or TDRs, right? But that activity
So it
does happen.
It's
Mhm.
just hard for me to tell decade by decade.
I think the last one was done maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Trying to remember the last time we grouped together a ton of our properties to rezone as open space. It just takes the county a lot of activity to put all those together and go through the process. So we tend to group them together.
Right. Well, no, and I guess, Tony, I realize you're not giving me all the answers, but I'm here to at least pose some of the questions as to what the intent of some of those what I consider non-open space acquisitions, right? There are residences or potential residences or existing residences. What are the intents? I get it. Like the low hanging fruit of claims to be purchased have kind of been flushed out. So what does open space spend its money on? I'm not in opposition to that. I'm just questioning what they'll become.
Well, sometimes I'll say Dry Gulch, we had no interest in the structures up there. We bought Dry Gulch despite the structures
Sure.
because it was a very valuable piece of property. And same thing when we bought
Lorium.
Lorium, there was structures up there. And we went in there thinking, okay, how can we, we want the land, the structures are gonna be a pain in the neck, but how can we make it doable and a win-win proposition, certainly in the short term. So, you know, for me, like I say, when we bought DeLorean, you know, for me, I would have opposed it if we were going to buy it and kick out Rose and Buttons right away. You know, they've been living there for 23 years. So, I mean, I'm only speaking for myself, but there are times that we have to deal with the entities that are there
Yeah, for sure.
despite the hardship that it creates for staff and for open space.
Right. No, I'm glad to hear you're compassionate in those situations for sure.
I gave you cookies for Christmas. You know I'm
Did, I
compassionate.
ate them. Thank you. You re-gifted cookies for Christmas. So, if you were to just predict nothing binding, what do you think will happen with Dry Gulch?
Dry Gulch?
Yeah.
God, I don't, you know, I mean, personally, what I would like, I'd like to maintain it as kind of an entity that you can cross-country ski and see an old mining town.
You know, you should do weddings up there.
No, I wouldn't do anything
Town
commercial,
employees. I was
but you know, but like I say, that's what I would love to see, but it would give Truckee a nightmare if all of a sudden, you know, next thing we know, a bunch of snowboarders are living there.
yeah,
So, yeah, but that's just me. I think that's a major, I love to ski up there in the winter time and see the buildings and I actually had keys to them for a long time.
Well,
But
yeah.
they shot that down.
All right, I've taken up enough time.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you so much.
Thank you, Drew.
I could, just for microphone. I mean, we've talked about Dry Gulch doing like a management plan for that area. So I think that's something that's going to come back to BOSAC to discuss, you know, what's the appropriate things to do here in terms of trails, the buildings, et cetera. So.
Did you get married up there?
I did. Jeffrey, you were there. Do you remember?
Yeah, I did.
Duke was there?
I did. Did I dance okay?
I think so.
Okay, good. All right. I
Do
can't.
we have an
remember.
idea of when that will come to us? What's your?
It's,
target?
we're waiting on Breckenridge history to complete an inventory and an assessment there. And I don't have a time frame on that. So we need to understand that first.
Okay, thanks, Drew. Any other non-agenda public comments? Thank you. And probably should have done this first, but discussion or approval of agenda? Anyone have any additions or deletions? Staff summary, please.
Sure, I'll just breeze through these. As you know, we've had a lot of wind and a lot of down trees that has been keeping everyone really busy these last couple of weeks. The conditional use permit is for winter grooming. We've had a couple of these over time. One is for the Gold Run Nordic Center to be able to groom Preston Loop, which goes on to the National Forest. And we've had a separate permit for some of our snowmobile groomed trails. And with one of these conditional use permits expiring, we thought it made sense to lump them all under one conditional use permit. And because we just finished a special use permit with the Forest Service, we just really wanted to kind of align those timelines. And actually just a few minutes ago, the county sent us the approval on that conditional use permit. So it's really just good housekeeping for us to be able to combine all that under one permit, only going back to the county once for all of that winter grooming. There was a map included in your packet if you want to see just what is groomed in the winter months. But we're excited to streamline that process.
Hey, there's, and I don't think it applies to this, the snowmobile or whatever we're talking here. But you know, the landowner by Bruce Campbell's place is required, is it build a trail or to, Catherine probably could speak to that better, to do some sort of grooming? You know what I'm talking about, by Bruce Campbell's old house
Where's that, Jeffrey?
up on Prospect, the base of Prospect Gulch Road. You know what I'm talking about?
I know where you're talking about, and I think we saw that when we were up looking at Dry Gulch.
Yeah.
Last winter, we were looking at
Yeah.
that.
But I was
property.
under the impression that maybe Scott told me that he is required to build a trail that he replaced for some other reason. I'll follow up on that. Oh,
Well, I'm not sure if I know where you're referring to. You're talking about before you get to Bruce's?
yeah, right. You know what Bruce, right across from Bruce's house is a hammerhead. You know, and there's supposed to be a homeowner that has some sort of requirement, probably not now, but in the summertime, to do some sort of trail work or restoration. And maybe,
I'm
you
not
know.
familiar with that, but yeah, if you think Scott knows about it, I'm happy.
yeah,
to work
I
with him
can,
on
you know,
it.
I could be totally off base, but that's what I think I heard that down the road. He's the one that put up all the buck and rail fences.
Yeah.
And I thought there was some sort of requirement that he had to do, but if,
He does own some property lower down in Western Sky, lots 19 and 20, in addition to up high where you're thinking of, where he has the larger parcels.
yep,
And on 19 and 20, he is required to do a trail easement when he constructs and subdivides on 19 and 20, because the driveway is not allowed to be the trail
Yep.
at the same time. So the trail will have to be separate from the driveway.
okay.
And that's what goes up to Chantilly.
So all he's required to do is to grant an easement, not do any sort of specific trail work.
I believe that's correct. He is definitely required to give us an easement. I'm actually not entirely certain on whether or not he has to build it or we have to build it.
Okay,
I'd have to double check on
okay.
that for you.
I'll talk to you about that offline.
And just a heads up on the Breckenridge race that is coming to Gold Run Nordic Center at the end of February. Bound to be a very exciting race for us to be hosting. And that trailhead at Gold Run Peabody is going to be impacted and used, I think, on that Saturday of the race. And we're just asking, I think the road is going to be closed to that as well, that last little stretch. So just make alternative plans that day. There's a lot of other great terrain to get out and see, but we'll try and message as best we can leading up to this event so folks are aware and can make plans to come watch or to go recreate elsewhere.
And do you anticipate us hosting this again? And if so, can we not close the road?
I really don't know. I haven't been part of those conversations at the special events committee. I think wait and see how this one goes. Certainly we'll have some feedback afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's duly noted, Duke. If we can make some improvements for next year, being able to try to maintain that trailhead being open at some point or some users and the road.
And finally, just the last staff update we have is a draft press release for burning piles, which we anticipate happening this winter sometime. The piles on Airport Road and up behind Shock Hill have cured enough. And Alex has been working with Red, White, and Blue and Summit Fire on just getting all the correct permits in place for that. Thankfully, we have too much snow right now to be able to do any burns. So if anything happens, it'll probably be in the late winter, early spring months when there's still some snow on the ground. But just want to give people a little heads up that is coming sometime this winter, and we'll make sure we get a hold of people. And Alex is also going to maintain a list for anyone that's smoke sensitive. We can get you on a list and make sure that you're called first, just so you can kind of make some alternative plans as soon as we know that that burn is happening.
And where is the Shock Hill open space?
We did a site visit there. It starts even behind the rec center off of Airport Road and kind of winds all the way up behind Shock Hill there. And then close to the distillery, next to the Forest Service burns, the town has 8 acres there that was cut and piled. Very steep slopes on all of these.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just real quick about I'm gonna murder the name. It's the Breckenridge.
Breckenridge.
Sorry, but I had the same concern about the road being closed, and we reached out to Mike, and what he explained to me was that one, they have to close it because they have to put snow on the road so that skiers don't have to take their skis off, right, to cross the road, and that they were looking at it, and maybe you all feel the same way, but as if there was still access to the trailhead and for those homeowners if you went through the Highlands.
Okay.
Their intent wasn't necessarily to completely block access to the trailhead. And I don't know if that's helpful or if you knew that already, but I agree. I mean, we can always look at how it goes this year and update for next year if we think it could be better.
And all the trails will be open, which is our usual policy. So you could still come up the trails from Gold Run and access that area. Any other staff summary questions?
Just want to say good job on, after that windstorm. You guys got out and cleared a lot of deadfall on some of the more popular trails. So, yeah, it's good work.
Cross country ski with a chainsaw more,
At least easy to deal with fat bikers that way.
Anywho, we are excited to have Breckenridge history with us this evening. Larissa is here with us to present an update to the Historic Resources Management Plan. I think time flies because we last visited the original plan about 5 years ago, and here we are ready for an update already. I think a lot has happened in the last 5 years and a lot of great planning efforts. So, Larissa, we're going to turn this over to you, and we can either pull up your plan if there's any pages you want to refer to, and we also have your interactive map,
Perfect.
which
If you don't mind pulling up the map, that would be
Okay.
great. And I may ask Suze, come down and kind of drive that if that's okay.
yeah. Actually, this chair.
Well, while that's getting pulled up, thank you very much for giving me a little time this evening to talk to you about the updated management plan. It's interesting to hear you all talk about Dry Gulch briefly. I think that's one example of why this plan does need to be updated, because things change, land ownership changes, condition of sites changes, other things have happened, and feel like now is a ripe opportunity to show you the latest and the greatest. So to refresh everyone's memory, we did complete the first management plan in 2019, and it's really a roadmap for how we approach projects on town and county open space, as well as on the national forest, with the goal of really looking at representative historical sites, meaning we're not out here to try to preserve and interpret every last miner's cabin, but there are a lot of historical sites. So we see it as our kind of charter to look at which ones we should prioritize for preservation and interpretation. So the new update really is mostly unchanged. For those of you who read that, the whole report word by word, I would say that 95% of it is the same as it was in 2019. So what we're looking at tonight is the bulk of the changes related to this matrix, which has been introduced. So we've looked at every single site that has been surveyed by archaeologist Eric Twitty and tried to evaluate each one based on 5 different criteria. And those are location. Is it somewhere that's easy to get to, meaning more like Front Country Zone, French Gulch, Gold Run Gulch? That's where most of our projects have taken place up to this point. Accessibility, which we don't define as ADA, but is it close to a trailhead? Is it near a 2-wheel drive road that people can easily get to? Interpretive value. Do we have photographs? Are there primary resources that help us tell the site's story in addition to just the preservation itself? Significance, meaning, is it one of only a few that remain? Is it the best example that we have? I'd say Jesse Mill is a great example of why we selected that site to preserve this last year. And finally, risk. Is the site in imminent collapse or at a point where it could deteriorate really, really quickly? So those are the 5 criteria, and we assign values to each of those. So to help illustrate how this works, I'm going to pick on 3 different town sites, and I'm going to start with Preston town site. And many of you, I'm guessing all of you actually, have been to Preston out in Gold Run Gulch, and it was really the hub of activity. If you want to show some of those photos, Susan, for Gold Run Gulch. And so it was sort of this epicenter of mining activity. It was the social center. It was the commercial core of Gold Run Gulch. And yet it has really gotten to a point where it's very close to, the remaining structures are close to collapse. So we just have a few illustrations here, some historical images, as well as those current photos of what it looks like today. So this site is, we've called it a 4 out of 5 in terms of meeting criteria. So there are 3 sites, 3 structures that we think are worthy of stabilization, and certainly a lot more interpretation out there to tell really that social story. So next, I'm going to go to Swan Dyke. I'm guessing only a few of you have maybe been out to Swan Dyke. It's way out there in the middle fork of the Swan. So off of Tiger Road, kind of northeast of Breckenridge, quite a ways. And just a little bit of fun history. Swan Dyke actually at one point had a population of about 500 people, but it was one of those sites, one of those town sites that came up very quickly and then died just about as fast. So there's not a whole lot there anymore. It's very difficult to get to. Probably not that many people see it. It's been pretty altered over the last several decades by recreationalists. There are some foundations still there. So we assign Swan Dyke as a 1 because there's still a bit left. It has a neat story, but it certainly doesn't rise to the top. And then finally, let's go to Tiger on Tiger Road. And Tiger is one of my most favorite sites, even though there is nothing left there today. It was the company town for the Royal Tiger Mines and had its own school, boarding house, community hall. It was bulldozed and burned down in the 1970s and 80s, and there is literally nothing left today. So this is one that we call a low priority site because there's really nothing other than interpretation that we would look at doing today. This is just that overview of where the town was versus Tiger Road and then the river restoration today. So that's just a quick snapshot of how we see this interpretive or this interactive map working for us. And I did include a few questions in the packet for you all, but really wanted to come to you tonight to get some feedback. Are we heading in the right direction? Do you like the criteria? Are there any sites that you'd like to talk about more specifically? I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Is there any way you could have, most of these, except maybe for the one for up far up Tiger, is drivable in a decent vehicle? Is there any way you have like a UL code, so with a placket that someone could hit their phone and get some of these photos that you just showed us, or is that just too far out?
I think that's certainly possible. And I look to Susan because she's the one who does all of this magic here. I don't take any credit for that, but I think there's absolutely an opportunity to try and connect technology to these historical resources that we have. So people
a lot of times when you put a placket up, the photos don't do it justice because of the sun. Eventually it degrades to a point where you can't see what you're talking about. So that's just a question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have a question about your criteria. It reminds me a lot of what we've been trying to do with our master plan. So I like seeing it in action in another place. Do you have, is it still come down to Breck history discretion? Or are you saying, okay, this checks the box, so it's 3 out of 5, so we're going to do it? I imagine there's some sort of discretion after you go through somewhat more like guidelines, just trying to compare our processes, because I think we're trying to do something really similar.
No, that's a great question. And I think for us, there are several factors involved. There's this criteria, but then there's also, do we have contractors who are ready to take on something that's challenging? Do we have the funding? Do we have the right partners in place? And is it a site where we are seeing deterioration happening quickly, or are there things happening with other infrastructure and we need to address this now? So I think just because something is listed as a 2 doesn't mean it's going to have to wait 15 years or 8 years or whatever for us to address it. It may come up more quickly. And so I think that's even internally something we've been talking about is some of these sites that rank higher may come a little bit later. It depends on kind of where we see our priorities shaking out. The main thing is we want to include these sites in the plan so you can see them all. It's a long list, but also I think important to see all the sites that we think are possible versus those that there's really so little integrity that there's not much we're ever going to do other than potentially interpret them.
Mm-hmm.
So Larissa, when you guys are looking at things, is your at actual interpretation, if the site can't, if there's so little left, like, you know, Tiger, for example, which has got a great story, would you just consider doing, you know, interpretation and not any other kind of remediation? Or if there are places like Swan Dyke where it really is just a lot of foundations,
Yeah.
does that raise it up? Is that what your criteria includes, just interpretation? Or is this talking about kind of the work that you did at Jesse, for example?
I see that as kind of a little bit of two different things. You know, interpretation reinforces preservation. So for the sites where we've done the work at the Jesse, we need to follow up by doing excellent interpretation. That's kind of part of the process. But certain sites like Tiger, absolutely, that's a story that still could definitely be told, and I think it should be. So there's part of the plan includes a whole section on interpretive signs and interpretation. So we've, I think, identified 30 or some different sites that may just be eligible for an interpretive plaque of some sort.
It's a really long list of great places. Do you have already kind of set out what you're thinking of doing for the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years? Will I be alive to see any of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have talked internally about a few different sites. Dry Gulch has definitely come up for us, and we're looking at, that's a tricky one because we've got this mix of 1800s era mining structures as well as the more contemporary buildings. But I think, as Jeffrey said, just going to Dry Gulch is a really interesting experience. So we don't, I think, anticipate managing Dry Gulch as a museum. That's really not something I think that we've really talked about, but more just as a place where we can continue to interpret, but also stabilize and help with the management plan that you all are working on. But without going into more detail on that, I think, you know, we've talked about the mini mine as a possibility, doing some work up there, Laurium, because of some, you know, changes there. You know, there's the boarding house there and then the mill and blacksmith shop that all may be options for preservation.
And that's not at the Laurium open space, or
It is, yeah.
Those little
It's,
buildings
yeah.
that are off
Mhm.
back. Okay.
And Mountain Pride, again, it's sort of a bit of that social history. There's the mine there, but also sort of how people lived and how sites were altered over time, even up until the 1970s. Lincoln City is another one, another ghost town out French Gulch Road. So, and then Preston, which I touched on, certainly. So those are just a handful of ones that we're talking about. I think still conceptual, and I'm not here to ask for money or to ask permission to do any of those now, but I think we'll be coming back with some more detailed thoughts on some of those in the near future.
You know, obviously when you restore something, the aesthetic value is obvious. And I think the kiss of death to any of these historic structures, this was two of them. There's one is just aging, rotting, but the second is vandalism. Have you found when you restore something, when you kind of make it a little bit more of a, more modern as far as the restoration, that it reduces vandalism?
I think when we combine stabilization and interpretation, when we tell the story and make a point of saying this is important to us, anecdotally, yes, we do see vandalism go down. That being said, this last year or last 2 years were really hard. We had some vandalism at the Wellington Orban and also on those Depression era sites, which are along the Wellington Trail. There was some graffiti, and I think that was just a case of some, you know, bigger issues with tagging in open space in general. But I think people do respect sites more when they see that they are appreciated and have been worked on and are interpreted.
I just had a more of a broader question, because we've been looking at this for kind of our trails and open space, but is there any other communities or any other kind of areas that you guys look to for guidance or kind of best practices?
I would say we're a leader. That's just to toot our own horn a little bit. But, you know, recently we've connected with Park City. They're doing a lot of similar work via their Park City Museum, more or less their same historical society type group. So we've made some new connections, you know, outside of Colorado. But I would say in the state, we're doing some pretty cutting edge work in preservation. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Larissa, for me, something that came to mind, I know one of your criteria was opportunity for public appreciation and interpretation, and you described it as accessibility. So for us, accessibility for people in wheelchairs, or maybe people that don't have capacity to walk very far, or even little kids, like that space, I don't see it addressed specifically in here. So how are you thinking about that piece?
And so we looked at it in that matrix with, which I suppose if we want to pull up the plan, I can touch on a couple sites, but accessibility in terms of being within a half mile of a trailhead or a two-wheel drive road, that's not a scientific reason, but to us felt like something where it shows that something is within reach for children or someone who may not be able to walk very far. But at the same time, we're working on the Keystone Drill this year, and that's one asset that, we're putting near the B&B trailhead, and we're creating a wheelchair-friendly path with the help of open space staff to create an accessible experience. So a lot of these sites, we can't change where they are, but try to prioritize or at least identify those that are within closer proximity to parking and buses and things like that.
Right. So just one follow-up with that. I know it says travel management shall be governed by different agencies, Summit County government, Town of Breck. So how does that, I'm just curious more to know, when you're proposing building out a site or restoring a site, how does that interface look with agencies? Are you talking about that at the outset?
In terms of just how people are getting to those sites?
Yeah.
I would say that's not something that we've really spent a lot of time on, and maybe we should be doing more of that. I think our process, for each project is, we come to BOSAC and OSAC and talk through the challenges or the opportunities with all of these sites. So, some of those things come out in that process of just the evaluation of like, how are we going to get materials to this site? What's it going to look like for public access? Where's the nearest parking? And I think that all comes out in the more kind of detailed planning that we do for each project.
Okay.
Will you be doing multilingual interpretive signs?
Currently, our interpretive signs have QR codes that take anyone with a scanner to Spanish. I think that's something that can be expanded, especially as technology is allowing us to do things in multitudes of languages. So I think as those resources are available, there's more and more opportunity to make things more multilingual.
One more comment. Were you going to go?
Go ahead.
One other consideration as we're thinking about, our placement for trails and where we're trying to direct people is kind of, and I think we've talked about this with the Keystone Drill, is like how much of these are actual attractions where people are going to see it. Like I'm thinking of Lorium, where we already have, it could be an amazing site to do, and parking is challenging and more challenging every year. So I think it's also just not an ask, just a consideration of kind of having a good understanding of how attractive these sorts of restoration projects are for people to come specifically to see those, and what the capacity is in those areas.
Yeah. That's a great point. And I think we see just that these sites add value to the experience. It's not necessarily something that's going to drive the kind of like the troll traffic, it's not that sort of thing. I don't see the Keystone Drill doing that. If it does, then
honestly, you should be proud. Yeah.
But, it's like the Riling Dredge. We invested a lot of effort in stabilizing that site. And I do think in a way it has become a little bit of a destination. It's, that accessible opportunity for people to see something that is maybe pretty unexpected. So I think we continue to think about things like accessibility and just opportunities like that, but keeping in mind always that if there's concerns about, overcrowding or things like that, that we would certainly want to talk through all of those before we went down the road of doing any project.
I love the matrix and the interpretive map too, but do you anticipate being able to update that in real time? Like Dry Gulch is a good example, if you don't have to update this plan again until 2029 and we acquire something equivalent, would you be able to insert that into the matrix?
Yeah, I think that's something that this map allows us to do very quickly. In just a moment's time, we can drop a pin and add a point on the map. So have we missed a couple sites in here? Possibly. I think we've been pretty comprehensive, but yeah, things change and there may be another acquisition or another site that drops in our lap or another keystone drill. I mean, not literally another keystone drill, but something just like it that drops in our lap. So I think there's a lot of flexibility.
I had one more question on the national monument status. Does that, if they're drafting a multi-year management plan or vision plan for that monument, does that prohibit you from doing things until that's completed?
Not necessarily. I think we've had some conversations with Adam Bianchi and some of his staff, and I think they're looking to us to help guide what will happen in the area of the monument that's in what we call our area of concentration, which is more kind of like Spruce Creek, Monte Cristo, McCullough Gulch area. So I think they're looking to us to help be a part of that conversation, and that, some stuff with the, Camp Hale side may take 10 years. And I think they're saying, well, if things can move faster on our end, we're open to that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Do you have any questions for us?
I don't. I think mainly just wanted to hear if you all are supportive of us moving this forward, meaning taking it to OSAC and then hopefully the Golden Horseshoe Advisory Committee and then through the town and county commissioner level. So a little bit of a process.
Everybody supportive?
That's great. It's really good.
One more question, Liz. I have trouble expanding this map. When the kind of the alternate way up Boreas Pass Road, it's, what's that road called? What is it?
Illinois Gulch?
Yes. There's a bunch of stuff up there. And I can't remember, do we have suitable parking and is there enough information out there to get, because that is a really easy place to go. And I can't remember if there is enough parking and if it's been publicized.
Near where kind of the sawmill
Yeah,
museum and all of that is. Yeah. And that's, we have several sites that are identified in the plan here. There's not that much parking there, but I think.
Is it enough parking? Have people discovered it yet?
I don't know. I think there's a combination of sawmill goers as well as trail users. And I would say in the fall, it's a mess, but otherwise it seems to be pretty well under control.
Thank you
Both for coming.
so much. Next up, we have Brett Create, and Tamara Natusi Park is here with us to talk about plans for BIFA and our Trail Mix series in 2024. And we do have a PowerPoint. We can give you the mouse if you want to advance slides on that. Next one to your right. Next one. Oh, that'll work.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. I'm Tamara from Breck Create, and I'm here with my colleague Carly McLaughlin, Senior Director of External Relations. And in case there are extra technical questions, we have our Theaters and Technology Senior Director online, as well as Avery Glassman, our Director of Programs and Special Projects. So we're all here to answer your questions. This is, we really appreciate the privilege of you even being open to art as a strategy for communicating our shared goals regarding open space and trails. And Trail Mix is one of our staff's favorite programs because it does just that. It's a tool for sharing the importance of our environment, respecting our natural environment, and making tangible what is sometimes hard to communicate around land use and our human relationship to the land. So thank you, Anne and Tony, for helping us develop this plan. And we'd really love to get your feedback, similarly to Larissa. And Breck History was actually a part of this plan development as well. And see if we're missing anything. We hope you kind of poke holes, and we'll spend most of our time talking about a new program at Riling Dredge. We have not used that site in the past, and we're hoping that you might endorse that so that we can take the next step of bringing it to OSAC and the county. So let's kind of continue on here. I thought it might be great to share a little more in depth. Obviously, you had a memo in your packet about the artists themselves and the kind of work that they would like to bring here to Breckenridge. And this has really, I was hoping there would be one meeting where the troll didn't come up, but it's too late. But our goal is to really manage those experiences. And it's actually a great example of how these artworks that have stemmed out of Trail Mix have not only reflected the character of our community and the values that we have, but also have begun to shape those as well, with Isaac Hartstone kind of being a favorite, making the New York Times. And this program has also was just featured on PBS as well. So we're really excited about this season. So you go to the next line, please. We had some key learning from last year. We reintroduced slowly our more public performances and timed engagements on the trails. And we were able to successfully manage that through our ticketing and registration system on breckcreate.org. We also do that for the snow sculptures. So this is a much smaller scale operation, but we did have one big learning, which was that the timing of our planning fell between when we originally presented to you here at BOSAC and when we submitted our SEPA. So we didn't catch our mindfulness hikes that we partnered with Building Hope on. And those were small events that we registered together with Building Hope. And this year we've advanced all those communications, and we'll be sure to have them as each step of the way. So you'll see that in the memo, but also as a part of the SEPA. And our goal to try and prevent that from happening again is really to document all of our work and schedules in these memos that we send to you in advance. So those mindfulness hikes were something we hope to repeat here in the next year. As it's stated in the memo, we would like to bring back our public performances 3 times a day during the weekday when there is less traffic, from August 19th through the 23rd. And let's go on to the next site. The 3 main sites that we used in the past is what we're planning again: Iowa Hill, Moonstone, and Illinois Creek, with mainly the performances by Trio, who a member of which used to be a part of public works staff, James Russick Smith. So we'll have an arborist test those trees, and he's very familiar with our community culture and the respect for the social engagements that happen alongside the trail. So we would extend an offer to him should that be the direction that we choose to go here tonight. In addition to those normal sites that we have, we would install the artworks from August 1st through 16th. BIFA runs August 16th through 25th. And the artworks would be on view from this August 16th through September 8th. And then deinstall would take place September 9th through 13th. The one new trail that we would like to propose is the Riling Dredge via B&B Trailhead and that parking area. And we would not only can advance the slides, or I can actually, here we go. So you can see these are the 3 sites that we've done in the past and the Riling Dredge site. Oh, now I shouldn't have taken control. On Moonstone and Iowa Hill, the artist that we have been talking to, she came for a site visit last summer, is Megan Geckler. She's currently based out of LA, and her signature material is one very familiar to this group. It's flagging tape. And this is an everyday mass-produced material primarily used in the male-dominated fields of construction, forestry, and mining, actually. And so Megan creates these large-scale artworks that are site-specific and really emphasize the colorful lines of the tape. So the intention of her work is really to investigate the human desire to define and control the spaces around us. This kind of off-the-shelf material is recontextualized on the trail in these installations, and we hope transcends its original use and purpose. So on Moonstone Trail, the trees will be wrapped, kind of creating like a Seussical look up the mountain. Hopefully reminiscent a little bit of the Lorax, but not reminiscent of when we painted the trees. So she has done this many times in the past, and we and open space staff also don't anticipate any harm to the trees in this area. And then on Iowa Hill, another flagging tape and object familiar to this group are these flags. And so we have a really unique community engagement strategy around this, where we'll replace false chamomile with these flagging tape flags in order to create color deposits along the hillside there. So I believe open space usually sprays herbicide in June and July. And then after that point in time, we'd come out with volunteers and weed the invasive species and replace them with these flags. And I think we'd coordinate with a county-wide pool, which would be really fun for us to promote and bring awareness through our channels too. So again, unconventional formations and use of these familiar materials to really show that, you know, we as humans are responsible for caring for this land. And it's really necessary for both of our survival, the land and humans, for us to work together. Then on Illinois Creek, we are working with an artist named Gerald Clark, and he is a visual artist, educator, and tribal leader, as well as a cultural practitioner. He is a citizen of the Kuya Band of Indians. He lives in the home his grandfather built in 1940 on the Kuya Indian Reservation and currently oversees the family cattle ranch. And
Where is that?
it is in California. So he also teaches at the University of California in Riverside. And so this installation is influenced by America's many roadside monuments placed by various government and civic and historical organizations. And so these monuments can often highlight historic events that romanticize our national and local history, but erase the history and presence of Indigenous peoples, cultures, and place names. And so his work will reimagine, there we go, will reimagine Breckenridge local histories through this native concept where time is more cyclical and tied to place. And so instead of historical monuments focused on the commemoration of the past, he really is focusing this series to commemorate not only the past, but also projects and events tied to the land that might and will take place in the future. So there will be 2 to 3 sculptures along the trail made of plywood, resin, faux river stone, and they're about 50 to 90 pounds each. And then lastly, you know, while we do love to bring in artists from across the country. We also do focus local artists, both musicians and visual artists, in some of the work that we do. So Bill Orsich is a local artist based here in Breckenridge, Colorado. Some of you might be familiar with him or his work, but his medium is really sound art, films, music, and multi-channel audio installations. So this is what has inspired the Riling Dredge installation that we're proposing tonight. He ties together in his work the sounds and dichotomy of human and nature. And his work is really based in a lot of research. He's been connecting with Larissa and Breck history in this experimental work. So we have an audio clip. This is some of his visual art here. I wonder if it's that. So that gives you a concept. It's very place-based. It would play for a few hours each afternoon. It's a 10-minute loop. You heard a lot of crickets. That was one of his sound works from a piece that he did in the South. But the idea is that this piece becomes a tapestry that weaves together the sounds and stories of the mining era that are particular to this historic site. So walking in and amongst that general area would give you a feeling of what it might feel like to be in the past, in that 1800s area in particular. So you can see here where we would place the various speakers. So in the red, you can see where those speakers would be, and the orange space is where the control panel and soundboard would be. And the blue is the main listening path for the artwork.
Does the blue go further than we can see right now, or is?
Yes, I don't know how to go backwards. Can you go back 2 slides? One more.
Not on the mouse.
There you go. There it is. Great. Yes. So you would begin to hear that sound coming into this area. But is there a more specific question? It extends.
How the blue goes off screen to the right.
Yes.
The bottom, does it go further than that, or is that? See what I'm talking about? Right?
Is just the trail entry. And so the idea by listening path is that that's where hikers would enter, and you'd be able to really get the full experience of the sound installation, because that's the entry point to where the speakers are pointing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That goes to the bridge, not B&B. I think some people would come from the upper right corner of the screen as we're looking, and then down into that area.
So the bridge is below that
Yes.
blue thing on the right. Okay.
I'm not sure how to advance. I shouldn't have took control in
I
the
know-
first
I know-
place. Do you?
I know
Okay.
this didn't fire.
Tony, would you mind moving us forward if you can? Perfect. So in general, our communications would encourage people to park at the B&B trailhead and hike the B&B trail to the Riling Dredge site. Or if, as on the next slide, take the purple line to the French Gulch stop and then hike to the B&B trailhead parking there. And all of our communications would push people in that direction for public transportation and minimizing the parking situation. But it would also be an extended period of time. So we don't anticipate large numbers of people going through this area. We are also not proposing any particular performances or specific times at which users would go and be directed to this time. So we really see it being an organic experience. Also, we like the site for the accessibility that is being created with the work that Larissa mentioned earlier. I think that is, can keep on going on. I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks. Good evening. So I am just going to talk to you a little bit about our communication strategy with Trail Mix as a whole. And then I'll also go into some specifics related to the performances that we'll be doing in addition to the visual art that Tamara talked about. But this is an example of those Trail Mix signs that we'll have along all of those trails that will be doing performances or have the visual art. And we'll ensure that on all of these signs, we'll have messaging around staying on the trails, leaving no trace, pack it in, pack it out. And that'll be a consistent message that we have not only on the physical signage, but on all email communication that we have, which will include, the moment somebody registers for one of these events, they'll receive an email confirmation that has some of those messages that are in alignment with the Be Like Breckenridge messaging as well. And we really anticipate and would like to take a similar approach to last year. We think it worked well. We were able to manage the amount of people coming onto those trails. And at any given performance, we had around 100 people, give or take, that were attending those. And I think that was a manageable number of people to have at those. And so that's where we would like to cap the attendance numbers at. We know, given that these are free events, many people that do register don't come, but they're also in free and in public places. And so people come that didn't register. And so we found that sweet spot of attendance, and it worked pretty well with that. And let's see. So that's for the cap of 100 would be for those performances that I'll go into here in a moment. But then for the guided mindfulness hikes, we anticipate smaller groups, about 30 people, capping the registration at that, so that that is a more intimate experience, and we want to ensure that user experience as well as respecting the trails. Oh, there we go. Maybe it just takes a minute. So here's an image of Trio, a performance that we've had. I think the last time was 2019, but years prior to that as well. And these three musicians will be suspended in the trees through deer stands. And as Tamara mentioned, we'll be working with arborists to identify appropriate trees for them to perform at. And you can see on the next slide, these are some locations that we've identified, the coordinates of those locations on those various trails where of those tree samples. And here's an image of those guided mindfulness hikes. Again, we'll be capping those at 30, and we will be partnering with Building Hope. We did that last year, and that worked well to provide brief or tours within these visual, within the spaces where we're combining the art with the nature. And we anticipate briefing all of the tour guides and telling their hikers to make way for mountain bikers, and continuing those messages that we have around leaving no trace on the trails. And then part of the activities or the performances related to these guided mindfulness hikes will include artist talks with some of the artists like Megan Geckler and Gerald Clark to talk more in depth about their work. And then another performance activation that we would like to have on the trails is a partnership with the Backstage, Breckenridge Backstage Theater. They have a performance called A Lady's Guide to the Mountains, which is a story of three women and their pursuits to their mountaineering stories, to hike various mountains and their journey along that. So it really ties to our mountain culture and values that we have, and highlighting the female perspective through that. And so we anticipate having excerpts of that performance along the trails, that will also promote the main stage ticketed performance that we'll do at the Backstage Theater.
This is all on the B&B trail.
Answer that. No, these performances will not be on the B&B trail towards the Riling Dredge. This will all be on the three, Moonstone, Illinois Creek, and Iowa, a mix of each. And we're happy to send you our rough schedule of those combination guided hikes, talks, performances by local musicians as well as trio. And the ladies guide would happen at 10 a.m., 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday during the festival. So that's the 19th through the 23rd. But keeping those to where we have always had them in the past, and really managing those effectively.
How do you envision, like, it would be like three actors doing this reenactment, or it sounds kind of cool.
It's very like we're early. We want to kind of get the go ahead before we work out all the details of the artistry and how we craft that experience together with the actors and the theater company.
So it'll be excerpts that will be later on performed at the backstage.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The full show is about 60 minutes. So what we are currently talking about is that the director or one of the actors would lead almost identical to the guided mindfulness hikes, would start at the trailhead, give a little introduction to what the experience is going to be and how difficult the trail hike might be. And then they would simply pause along the way of the loop that we would take, which would include a stop at the artworks and a brief moment of reflection there. So there'd probably be two occasions where there would be a brief pause on the loop, and they might be in character the entire time. So.
And then the last performance activation that we anticipate is as hiring local musicians to perform on the trails as well. And so those are the three things that we would like to feature on our trails. And yeah, that's it. We just appreciate your time. I think, as Tamara mentioned in the beginning, we really value the environment and stewardship of the environment. And so it's a real privilege to be able to work at the intersection of arts and the environment to bring awareness to our spaces and how we can all take responsibility for respecting them and ensuring that they're here for many years to come.
I have one question for you. You said that you would cap it at 100, but this says 50.
That's correct. Last year we did cap it at 100. We kind of phased it in to see how things would work. So we started with about 50, and then we reached out and we said, "Are you really coming or no?" We suppose that about 50 of the 100 people actually came, and then there were the passersby. So we never had more than 100 people in the area. But we find with free events, because there isn't necessarily a point of purchase or sale, that commitment tends to wane and wax. And so that's the strategy that we used last year. And I know that's slightly different than your memo. We can be flexible with those numbers, but we found last year that it worked to kind of keep it at 100. And because there are more opportunities to engage on the trail, 50 we believe would be a good number, but we think 50 people max would show up even if we had the registration open to 100.
I had one thought on the riling, the sound, spacing the word feature. What do you call it?
That sound installation, but feature
Installation.
works as
Yes,
well.
okay. Just advertising, accessibility is on the mind, but advertising the Riling Dredge parking for, and our new wheelchair friendly trail for those folks. So
We would love to bring some attention to that success and new option.
yeah. And I just want to say, I think it's so clever and awesome to see open space merging with art, merging with Building Hope and the Backstage Theater. I think it's super cool to see
And
this
Breck
collaboration. And what?
And Breck history.
And Breck history. Yeah, it's so neat. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's, we really delight in being able to bring together different people and partners for similar causes. And this is why it's one of our favorite programs.
Can we just revisit Bobby's question? Because I noticed that too. So the memo says 50 for these events. You want to do 100. And did you do 100 last summer? And did the memo say 50 last summer?
I don't think we had a memo last year. And we were just starting to experiment with registration and how it works. I honestly, do you recall?
I don't think we had like a memo and set numbers. I think what we anecdotally noticed during Trail Mix last year was about 30 people was what we were seeing about on average during these performances. I will say we never got any poor feedback at all from the public on that. And last year was the first chance that we had to sort of also check out these sites, do a little bit of baseline study to see kind of impacts following it. And I think things went really, really well. And I just want to thank Brett Create. Avery spent a lot of time with Tony and I really going over these details so that we could understand it. And I feel like we've had a lot of internal discussions. And I think the Moonstone, the Iowa Hill, the Illinois Creek, we have a pretty good track record with those the last couple of years, some with performances, and I think it's been really well received. Overall, I think what's new and different this year is obviously the Riling Dredge. And I think just a point on that one as well is that is on joint town and county land. The county hasn't participated in Trail Mix previously, so this will be going to OSAC. But I think OSAC is looking for a little bit of direction from you all. So
Hey, I have a question on this, on the what's it called survey tape. Is that going to be repurposed, recycled, reused? What happens to that when the installation is completed?
That is a good question. And Avery, if you're online and can put something in a chat, I would love to hear from that. I do know that I can get back to you on that question. But I do know the artists that Avery selects, were always very conscientious of the materials and their life. These may be used in a subsequent, installation that Megan would take back with her, but it is site specific, so I'm not entirely sure. We could recycle it through the Rotary program. I believe it's that same material, and we can take it. Well, we're a collection site actually for the Rotary's plastics. That I think it's what the Trex program that they
And
support.
it's also possible, perhaps it could actually be saved and used, town uses flagging tape and things like, any rate, just think about that, put that on the map.
Yeah.
And one thing that was said, that kind of got me a little bit concerned. Hikers make way for mountain bikers. I don't think that's the case. I think we've always kind of encouraged mountain bikers to yield to foot traffic. So maybe something as large as this, that could be the regard du jour, but I think for the most part, I think for this short period of time, it's not too much to ask wheel traffic to yield and be polite and let this thing happen. So I don't know how you guys feel about
Put
that.
up one of your signs that says, "Face it, you yield to everyone."
And I think, I think that the main point, Jeffrey, is that we're going at is we're still trying to maintain an open for all users, and that trail is theirs, and we don't want that user experience interrupted You know, so I think that's just what we've talked with Breck Create about, is really just being mindful of all trail users and making sure they're having a good experience.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but how it was phrased is hikers make way for mountain bikers. So, you know, that could be a slip of the tongue, or that could just trying to be extra polite, but the bottom line is, this is a short period of time and there's not too much to ask, people to be cognizant of. There's gonna be a buttload of floppy hats looking at that. So it's just, you know.
Well,
so-
I think that's, but we wanted to, we just want everybody to be safe while they're having the experience. So we'll work on some messaging with the staff and our advanced materials and communications for hikers and maybe some
Yeah.
bikers as
Yeah,
well.
I'll bike to these installations, and I'll have an Aruga on my mountain bike, so people.
Or awareness for the group that's not familiar with these trails, that there are multiple users that will be coming maybe quickly.
You might have one will look like Wilford Brimley going very slow. That would be me. So, cool.
Are there any other questions specifically about the Riling Dredge? I mean, we'd love, if you feel supportive of this, we'd love to have your endorsement as we take the next steps in the process.
Do you think you'll really be able to get people to take the bus?
Well, our reach is pretty significant from a publicity standpoint. And, we will do our very best to encourage that. It's such an easy access point. And so you'll see that repetitively in our messaging. We could, create some kind of prize if you're riding.
I was thinking some incentives besides just the fact that
Yeah.
we don't have to park.
Yeah.
Yeah, let us give some thought to that. Maybe there is an incentive with some of our other BIFA ticketed programs, like win a ticket to the Ladies Guide to the Mountains or
Hand out
something.
edibles.
It's still a,
Night, oh, sorry,
are you sure?
talking about the same thing.
A few things. One, it is still a pretty decent hike to get to Riling Dredge. So I think if it's coupled with, you can still park here or take the bus, but it will still be a fairly significant hike if you're not a hiker. I think it will kind of maybe slow down some foot traffic compared to Illinois and Iowa Hill. I love the idea of sound. I think it's super unique, and I personally look forward to experiencing that. While it's a good opportunity to highlight our new parking, I also worry that for folks who have seen that parking lot, they'll think they have a secret in and have a parking lot up there, and there is the one across the street. So I do kind of worry about that. I don't know if there's anything we can really do. I just wanted to express that concern that parking lot is very close to Riling Dredge and is specifically for ADA. So I get a little concerned with that.
If there isn't specific ADA signage at the lots, that's something certainly we could add to our print collateral, temporary print collateral, like please reserve for handicap.
There will be
parking.
by then, right?
We'll have it signed by June.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
But I would like to add to that maybe you could just say parking at B&B only, because that other slot has got what, 4?
Handful.
Yeah, small. I'd rather not encourage anybody to go beyond B&B.
You have so many people like turning around when it's inevitable.
Yeah, and then
full,
you
know.
get parking on county roads, and Catherine says that's illegal.
Dave, how do you capture informing someone who's handicapped that they could park there though?
I would just say ADA access only.
Oh.
Yeah.
But including that in the messaging?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah. Kristen, to your point, that is probably almost 2 miles by my estimation to get from the bus,
Yeah.
which is a hefty hike for most to
Yeah.
round trip. So it might be worth, I'm sure you were thinking that, but advertising the distance.
It's not like as quick as going to see the troll or the trio.
Right. Oh, and I had one other, and I assume staff, you've already talked about this, but how the sound interfaces with wildlife
Yeah.
impact.
I think, it's a bit of an unknown for us. I think the artist wants to keep it to, was it 55 decibels, which is the county residential limits, and running it for a few hours a day, as I understand it. I don't really know. I'm hoping by mid-afternoon, a lot of, animals are so very active at dawn and dusk that I would be really concerned about that time of day. It's hard for me to gauge. Otherwise, I think afternoon is probably the best time you could pick, but yeah, a good point.
Yeah, and I just kind of thinking even about the whole stabilization project at the dredge when that was going under 2 months of process with, generators and machinery running, but, there was,
Helicopters.
helicopters.
That's true. So it's gone through worse, a lot more noise than that point. Yeah.
I don't have a great idea off the top of my head, but is there somewhere closer to town and further away from wildlife and easier to park where this could be an alternate location for this? I don't like that you have to hike really far and it's out of the way and there's going to be speakers blasting this artificial noise for hours every day. Doesn't seem great to me.
I was thinking the same thing. Have we explored the little spur experiential trail off of the B&B
Right.
parking lot? Just that little
Right. Maybe
cut
right
trail up there that is really underutilized. And I love the idea. I love the sound concept, and I love trying something new like this. But yeah, we battle a lot with just kind of the overuse in that zone, and not having a great idea of how to manage it, and it just gets more popular all the time. So to add another layer to it is concerning, not unachievable, but it's just a concern.
If the drill was already there.
If the drill's there.
Well, I can say, in terms of decibels, I would be surprised if we reached the max limit. I mean, it's really, the feel of it is intended to feel in an organic and not in your face but highlighting that human tension, right, with the land that you're describing right now. The piece is currently designed by the artist for that particular site. We can certainly do a little more research around other areas, but it is pulling in some of the dredge specific sounds that he's worked with Breck history to understand. So it would be some consideration, and we'd have to see if it's something that we can do elsewhere. I don't have the answer.
That's the
for the
reason why
question.
it's such a popular site, is there is so much history and access right there.
I'd push back a little bit. If, depending on how many speakers it has, if it has enough speakers, it wouldn't have to be that particularly loud. It's an area that gets a lot of humans in and out of there. We're kind of creating a destination. I wouldn't want it year round, but I think if it's done thoughtfully, I'm less, I'm a bunny humper, I kind of err on the side of anti-fireworks, anti-noise in the backcountry, but I personally, I'm not too concerned about this for a short period of time. If it was done at sunset, kind of after the sunset, before, when the animals are most active, and also it's an area that gets a huge amount of dogs. So I'm not worried, but that's just my 2 cents.
On the transportation part, would it be possible to have a bus system that goes closer to the Riley?
Didn't turn around.
Yeah. I don't think that's
even small.
that's a go from previous years of asking for something like that. Yep.
The other, Jeffrey, just to echo what you're saying, I think the accessibility piece to this is important, and I think it's a plus for this location that we can offer that to people. I think that's worth thinking about.
As far as the new trails.
Yes.
That you pushed me on.
I did.
Yeah, maybe we can get you and Tony there to give tours.
Go listen to the noises.
I'm gonna go for sure. I always check out these things, and it's never been that crowded, so whatever.
I just have a question about the Illinois one. I didn't get a good understanding. They're 90 pounds. These sculptures, are they like really big? What are the dimensions of these? I couldn't tell from the picture. Let me see if I have that. in my
Was it
notes.
30 to 90 pounds?
Something like that.
I
don't have the specifics with me on the exact, do you have
I,
the
I
height?
think when we met with Avery, they were gonna be around 3 to 4 feet
Okay,
tall.
maybe 5 at the
Five.
most, something like that, but just sort of, yeah. column.
And you guys, you said you had gone to the, like where the trio would be in the performances and determined, because I know, I mean, I went to one, it's really cool. It obviously like people are walking all over, not on the trail, but you didn't feel like, in your opinion, that was harmful.
And we have a lot of new fencing out there.
That's
Yeah.
true.
That you helped. put up.
And we haven't, seen any major impact or, soil compaction in that area. And then another good thing too is the Epic is running after before, so we're
It's-
not gonna be intertwined with them as well.
Yeah, that's a great
Riders are
idea.
hearing Things by that point anyway in the race, so.
Some people are still going.
That was part of our intention, is to moving the dates of the festival in general, is to kind of make sure that all of the offerings that are supported by town dollars, funds, resources are well paced throughout that. So the NRO ends, at the beginning of August, then the Breck Epic, and then BIFA falling on the tails of that. So we're really trying to be mindful of what the big picture is in terms of our town supported events.
As these sounds installations, I know the example from the PowerPoint was in the south somewhere. Have they been somewhere in, this far away from development in other installations across the country or world? And how has that impacted those places?
That's something I could look into. I don't have that research at my fingertips right now. I think this trail mix series is very unique to Breckenridge. There is a version of it in Arkansas that I can see what the benchmarks are, but that has been much more grandiose and spectacular in nature. Whereas we try to be a little more subtle and intentional about, well, now we do post troll, and intentional about the materials and the experience and how all of that is managed together. But we could look into if there has been a sound installation in similar areas and what the impact is. But similar to Breck history, we are a leader in this area. And so we're really, trying to learn and have as many feedback loops with both the town staff, with our own staff, and with the partners that we engage to monitor and make adjustments in the moment. So if we need to shut it down because it's too much, then we shut it down.
And I appreciate, it sounds like staff is comfortable with the relationship with you guys, and clearly there's great messaging to everybody enjoying these installations, and it seems like a good combination. This is such a huge unknown, nobody knows about this, and we're about to just say, yeah, sure. I mean, you said organic, but let's see, it is digging, rock crushing, steam engines, water, voices working, nature, and animal sounds. It's like organic in that it's replicating the dredging history, which I don't think we're terribly proud of from an environmental sense. So anyway, I'm worried, but I trust that if staff is okay with this and has the oversight to shut it down if it doesn't go well, I could be behind that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody else?
Yeah, I think it's a really cool idea. I'm looking forward to experiencing it. Worry a little bit about the transportation part.
Yeah, I don't have any additional comments to the ones I've already made. I'm generally supportive. I do think, the one we heard might have been a little bit more nature focused than hammering. So hopefully it's an enjoyable soundscape and not one that you are trying to avoid. But if it's art, generally supportive. How are you going to explain? Like, I imagine there will be plenty of people who are just walking by and have no idea that this is happening, and that could be alarming. Is it similar to kind of the signage that you've had before, like introducing the artist? And
So part of the signage is wayfinding and the other is reasonably interpretive. We try to keep the interpretive very simple and direct people towards QR codes, which bring them to a website that is available in both Spanish and English that has the artist statement and description of the work, so they have an understanding of when it is. But on the interpretive signage, there's the artwork name, a brief description, a QR code, messaging around leave no trace, and when to expect the sounds to start and end, or the installation rather to start and end.
So daily, just a few hours a day is really all you're gonna run this.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. So, we haven't determined a specific amount, and if you have any feedback on what you think is appropriate, we can definitely build that into our plan.
Yeah, and then just the one kind of disconnect, and generally I'm not necessarily opposed to this. I think with along the lines of Duke, it's not a deal breaker for me, but I was kind of hoping it would be more meditative than the rock crushing, as I thought, well, maybe it's contemplative or meditative, and then you add in building hope, and I feel like that kind of has a nice connection there. But nevertheless, you said that your PR is far and wide, you have a very broad reach. I'm just curious how you manage if your reach goes a little bit beyond and we kind of have a bigger crowd than expected. Are you?
We will be very direct in saying this is free with registration, and really describing why it's important for us to understand who's coming and such. It is, to be very honest, it is a risk. We walk openly into it as well. And we believe that the experience that will be provided is meaningful enough to describing that, what we shouldn't do, which we should learn from our past histories of our land use, and really framing the messaging around that. But if we aren't registering for this particular installation because it is over a period, it's a duration, a loop, I think, we'll just add the messaging of like, please, around that. I think we aren't advertising this particular artwork. We don't really invest. We don't have a huge marketing budget, and we aren't investing that marketing budget in programs that are free to the public as much as we do for the paid performances and shows. So it's really general awareness. So how people find out about it organically through the overall festival marketing, as opposed to Riling Dredge happening now 2 to 4. There wouldn't be any Summit Daily advertisements or social media paid advertising around that. It would be for the festival. And if you drill down to your interests under the marketing plan of the festival, that's how you would find out about it. Or through a particular partner's promotion like Breck History, or if our BOCC wanted to say, hey, here's the new parking lot and there's something cool happening here. So there are ways that it's really managed by, we're not doing paid advertisement for these works, and specifically the Riling Dredge installation.
When's the Breck Epic?
Week before BIFA.
It finishes on the 16th of August.
Okay, so it's well before you guys.
We start on the day they end.
Okay. Do we know what the last leg of the BIFA of Epic is?
Let's go. It's usually the finishing at
Yeah.
Illinois.
Yeah, and the ice skating rink.
Ice rink,
Okay, so there's no conflict there.
Illinois Creek.
Illinois Creek.
Yeah, we don't go anywhere near.
But they're not starting over in B&B area on that day.
So David, you're in support?
Sorry, I was just, yeah, I'm being contemplative and meditative.
Some sounds?
Well, I just, yeah, I know, break the silence. I guess,
Funny, Bobby.
you know, I've kind of been on this, I've been with Chris and Duke particularly along the Riling Dredge and the, you know, you live in the neighborhood. And I'm just, I think I'm a little bit less concerned here because you have in the past, it hasn't been a big giant turnout or anything like that. I don't know if you would consider just for the Riling one that it would be limited to 50 instead of 100. That might be one way to just sort of, you know, kind of meet some people in the middle who are concerned. I think, you know, the walk from the bus stop up French Gulch Road on a hot afternoon is not pleasant. And it's dust, you know, can be dusty and all that good stuff. So I think just kind of being careful about that. But yeah, I would say with hesitation. I mean, I like the idea. I think it's very cool. I kind of wish we had the knowledge to kind of help them, you know, decide where to go, because it feels like this artist has already planned it and, you know, that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm hesitantly okay with it, but I share the concerns, and I just hope that if you guys tend to see a lot of activity up there, that you won't wait for staff to pull the plug, that you guys will say, this is closed, we're done. I think that'd be one way, you know, for you guys to be good partners. So yeah, I'm anxious about it, but I know you've done good work in the past. So
I'm supportive. The one, Tony, you had mentioned there was an encouragement to make sure trail traffic could continue per usual, more or less. But my personal experience, and Kristen, I ran into you. I don't know if you remember, this was years ago, but there was no way you could I was on a ride, like just on Moonstone trying to get through, and there was no way I could have.
Oh.
And it took a while to sort of navigate all the people. So I just wonder if there's messaging around, if that's the intent to maintain trail usage during events, that there's some messaging around people being cognizant of trail users.
for the Breck Epic or for this?
But all the riders by, no.
We talked about that one particular area too, Nikki. And then we talked about maybe utilizing the access road that we put in to access the Beeline Trail, where we could separate
Oh, yeah.
those performances
good
kind
idea.
of off the trail a little bit. So
Yes.
it wouldn't be right on the trail.
That's great.
Okay, so I think there is support. Sounds like 5-2, and even, I don't want to speak for you, Chris, but I'm open to this too. You know, I have concerns, but I'm not steadfastly against it or anything. Same for you, Chris?
Same.
Yeah, and I think we all appreciate, it's clear that you take our concerns into account and incorporate them into your presentation and planning, and so thank you for that.
Thank you. And I do live at the top of the Wellington, so I personally will be up there quite a bit just to make sure, you know, I'm seeing what you all are seeing and that it feels appropriate, and definitely willing to make the call if we need to, whether it comes from the town or to do it within our own organization.
I feel like it could go, not to belabor the point, I feel like it could go either way. Like it might not be your most popular because it is so far up from transportation and you can't take a picture of it.
Correct.
So I feel like a lot of people.
It's not Instagrammable.
Instagrammable, and picking up the jackhammering will not be pleasant for anybody in a video. So I don't know. I'd be curious to see what you guys end up tracking, because it might definitely not be your biggest draw of the summer. Go. But we'll go.
Question was, for me anyway, how are you capturing numbers was that based off the reservations, or were there people actually?
We have clicker staff members clicking how many
Okay.
people are there. I did it personally myself last year.
Okay.
at the Illinois Gulch when we had the chirp programs there. So we're clicking. We also have trail counters installed thanks to the staff. So we're seeing, how it relates and looking at the numbers of, what does this mean for pressure on the trail system, and, how does that weigh? And I don't know if you're seeing any particular findings, but we're happy to share some of that. This would be interesting. We hadn't planned to staff it necessarily, but rather take temperatures, once a day of like, okay, how many people are here now? But if it is running between 2 and 4 hours, we probably wouldn't have the resources to put somebody there the entire time. But certainly in those first few days and on the weekends, we want to make sure there's a presence there at the beginning and the end. Plus we have to set and strike the event as well. So it'll mainly be around the sandwich times of start and end that we have people there. So twice per day, but maybe not the entire time.
Okay. Jeffrey could do that.
He'll be retired.
I'll be retired by then.
You could click.
One kind of future leaning question.
Sure.
As you look around, your ecosystem of the art world, is there anything that you would love to bring to our community that you can't do because of, limitations that we have right now with the parking and the space and trail access? Is there anything that you've seen that, would just be pie in the sky? And I only ask this in the framework of kind of our tentatively named little daisy preserve. If we had a space that, not that we're going to purposely build an open space for events or functions, but I'm just curious if there's anything that you've seen that would be just over the top, bring to town.
I mean, yes,
Yeah,
all the
I'm
time. But I think,
Great minds.
in our perspective, constraints breed creativity.
Okay.
And so we really appreciate the opportunity to have these kinds of dialogues and make sure that the work that we want to have is here. I mean, I would love to have that Ai Weiwei bike installation back from pre-pandemic that, is along the trail. I think, public art is a very special and meaningful way to bring grace and beauty to a community. And I think the investment that our town already makes in the district as the backbone of the core of town is incredible. And there are huge imaginatives we think that we bring, but we always try to weigh those against the financial, what it costs to bring that kind of thing here. And if it's, really aligns with our values. So if you have sites in mind, or if you have ideas, we love to hear them, because that's how these things come together. I mean, Bill Orsich came to us 3 years ago, and it's an iterative process. And so those kinds of conversations we try to bring in every project. So do I have something at the top of my head? No, but if there's, a budget and a goal and a way that we can help make a particular opening or a celebration of a particular historic site, or really drill home on a land use issue that you want to raise awareness around, we are here and want to be your partners on that. So we will find the big, beautiful things that make sense for what you want to do.
Great. We appreciate it. And we reciprocate. We think about everybody, Breck history, you guys, everything with all the decisions we're making as well. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for all the
That's
time.
Great. Much appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah, so the next item on the agenda was a request from administration, I believe council as well, to reconsider the dates of our BOSAC meetings. Historically, up until about 2017, BOSAC used to meet on the third Monday of every month instead of the fourth. And we've been requested to move it back to that schedule simply because it allows us to be able to get information into the council packet and a little bit more more meat and more information available to council at that following meeting. Council meets the second and the fourth Tuesdays of each month. And we have been requested if we move that to the third Monday. Typically the council packet gets compiled on Wednesday, and that would leave us about a day for minutes. Council wants to see the BOSAC minutes to get those minutes into the packet. And then the open space is now on the agenda for each council meeting, just so that council has this connection to BOSAC and really kind of that big picture of what's happening. And so per our current BOSAC rules, we have to present a change at one meeting and let you think about it for a month and then vote on it at the next meeting. And as soon as you vote on it, it takes effect immediately if it passes. And so what's in your packet is just a very simple track changes of the rules, changing the date to 2024 and changing regular meetings from the fourth Monday to the third Monday of each month. And there's an accompanying resolution, which would be on the schedule for February's meeting for you all to vote on. And we would read through this resolution, and if everyone agrees to that, it would take effect pretty immediately. And just some of the implications, I think this is a great opportunity to be able to get more information in front of council if we meet on that third Monday. The challenge for us is turning around minutes that quickly. And so we had this conversation with Duke the other day that we would do more of an abridged meeting minutes to be able to get into the council packet, because it takes our Alex here a ton of time, as you might imagine, to compile some of our minutes, which are upwards of about 24 pages. We obviously want to make sure that people have access and have that link to the YouTube channel so you can go back and watch all of these meetings. Brooke in our communications department uploads those for us and puts those out there on YouTube. But it would mean trying some abridged minutes so that we can get those into the packet for council on time. Happy to take any questions whatsoever.
Hey, real quick, if someone wanted to watch the meeting tonight, is it up tonight?
I mean, obviously live, anyone can
yeah.
join in, but I think I'm not sure what Brooke's schedule is, if it takes her a
Okay.
couple of days, but she
Oh, I see.
uploads it.
Up the next day.
Okay, all right.
Just pretty fast on that. Yeah.
That's been a problem for me. I've already made travel arrangements based on our current schedule, and this new schedule, I'd miss some meetings because of that. And the other thing is I run a book club that meets jointly sometimes with another book club that is on the third Monday of the month. And when it's my club with them, I kind of hate to miss that, but I'm not going to miss this either. So it's not ideal for me.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. And I think we provided a list of what those dates would be. Obviously, January and February would be the fourth Monday. If you all vote on February, it would take effect for that March meeting. Coincidentally, that third Monday in March is part of a long weekend for the school district, so that may affect a couple of people. And the April meeting is during spring break with the school district. So, you know, not necessarily the most convenient, but I do think it makes great sense to be able to just have a better connection with council and keeping them updated on all things open space.
I will say council really appreciated the last meeting about the report. I mean, it was brought up a couple times.
Yep.
Before and after the meeting. So.
It's fine with me. It doesn't matter to me if it feels like it's more beneficial for town, then I'm supportive. I feel sympathetic to those who have already made plans. It doesn't matter to me, so, but I feel bad for Bobby.
Well, it can't be changed. You don't generally buy refundable airline tickets.
Understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there'd have to be some built-in excused absences for like I can see 3 of them that I know I can't make. And that's fine, as long as it's understood by council that we're trying to adjust to the new schedule.
Yeah.
So they meet on the second and fourth.
Correct.
So this would be, you'd have 2 weeks almost to get, or a week and a half to get.
Except the packet goes out on Wednesday, right after the BOSAC meeting, if we move to the Yeah, and so that's the challenge, to be able to just get any of that information in the packet.
It goes out the third Wednesday?
Well, every Wednesday before the council meeting.
So the day after our meeting.
Is when staff submits all their memos and they compile.
So maybe this throws more of a wrench. Does it have to be determined now, or could this be something that we do halfway through the year and then we avoid like the March and April concerns and all that? Or is that just like more of a headache than is necessary? But if that helps alleviate some of the travel concerns or the school break concerns, could we revisit this for like starting in August or something?
I'm looking to Mark.
People have conflicts and maybe
Mhm.
do a poll around you guys.
Mhm.
See. I mean, the council's asked for this. I mean, Kelly specifically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, because right now what happens is, you know, we have this meeting and typically, not this one, we change this date, but typically the next day we already have a council meeting. They don't have any.
Right.
Well, my report, very thorough.
This is why they asked for the change.
But that's not gonna last forever.
It makes sense. I think we can all get behind the reasoning of this, yeah.
Yeah, so, we could take a look. If it looks like we're gonna have too many apps, make this effective a little later, but that's,
Thanks.
I think we should probably act on it.
Yeah, I can send an email around and maybe just fill it in, what dates work, what don't, and we can just kind of get a opportunity to see where everyone is.
Because if this went into effect today, we wouldn't be making any changes until
Would be the
the
March
would
meeting.
change.
Yep. Is February would be a vote. Or some other date if that's the case, if too many people are gone.
Then how about, the minutes, making them more abridged, but having the videos available? Anybody object to that? Is that okay?
It's fine with me.
Great.
Although I'll miss your verbatim. Yeah.
Alex does an amazing job. Thank you, Alex, for those.
And then didn't
Yep.
council also request one of us attend those meetings after?
I think it's encouraged. Any BOSAC members should definitely feel free. I know Bobby came to the last council meeting. It's great to have you there. If it works with your schedules, it'd be great to have you there. Just in case there are questions and just they know you're all engaged and we're all kind of working together that way.
This is a nerdy question, but are the BOSAC rules in the code or the charter, or are they a separate?
They're
doc-
referenced in the code, but they're kind of the standalone document. I mean, I think the town is going to go through and change a lot of the commission rules to standardize things, but as it is right now, it's referenced that we have these rules and the rules are what you see there in the packet. And so like changing the meeting date to today because people couldn't make it last week, you know, we have the ability to do, those types of changes.
But the resolution that goes.
That will be, one of the town resolutions. that gets-
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just kidding. It's
Yeah.
just, I'm just trying
What
to
are you
keep
gonna
up.
do with it?
I just like
Like that
knowing.
stuff.
I like knowing.
It's gonna be on the trivia.
Yeah, it's trivia, guys. Take note.
It's like no reason.
Kirsten is working on just trying to streamline a lot of the commissions and bring them more closer together on some of the rules and regs. So we'll see what happens later this year.
Okay,
So
thank you.
you'll send out a poll for date conflicts. Yes. Anyone else have questions? Any other questions? on this? Great.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Council matters related to open space topics?
Yeah, it's nothing really. One thing that was kind of interesting, it doesn't really relate to open space. We had a report by Jesse Burley and Jess Hoover. Jess is from HC3. Kind of evaluating and studying, it was a grant. They provided the monies to study how our climate action plan serves or disserves the underserved community, you know, the marginal, unseen community. And it was a bit disheartening, you know, just as far as the rebates you get for, you know, whatever to make your house energy friendly, the availability of recycling and, you know, some of the places that the folks that have a little bit less dough live, there's more condo projects, their project doesn't have recycling, so it's more onerous for them to get anywhere. Just, and so they're studying it and now they're not, you know, they have some thoughts about how to make it a little bit more accessible. That was kind of, if you, it's in the last meeting, if you want to read it, it's pretty comprehensive. I bet they spoke for a half hour between the two of them. And again, it just kind of hammers home that, we all look pretty much the same here, except for the age. But there's just so much of our community that doesn't look like us, and the benefits and the things that we find that's convenient to let us live maybe a little bit less impactful life than some of these folks. It's just not as easy for them. And by that, the result of that is some of the recycling numbers aren't as good as it could be. Some of the people accessing public transportation is not as robust as it could be. So that was pretty interesting.
I
And-
thought it was really sad when they said that they were afraid to rock the boat with their landlord.
Yeah.
They wouldn't bring up any of these issues for fear they'd get booted out.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. Wish my tenant felt that way. He's just a whiner. No, so that was about it.
I know.
And, and also, like I'm gonna be put out to pasture in April. And there has been kind of off the record talks about who's gonna replace me, what council rep. So if you have any thoughts on that, if you have any, talk to Kelly, because she's gonna have a big say in who it's gonna be. So
You've served well, sir.
thank you very much. Yeah, well, I couldn't have done it without you and Kirsten helping me in my iPad.
I'm here.
Tony giving me the advice, if I do hard luck, just to lower my seat and close my eyes.
You remember that?
So for you, highlighting that is a good reminder, I think, for us to keep our finger on the pulse of it's so easy to forget, and we need to be cognizant and really focusing on that piece.
You guys know all the council people, and if not even that, if it's not even for that issue, if you have, pretty much the buck stops with council. If you have thoughts, you all know them socially, so reach out to them. They'd love to. And BOSAC is like that. I swear, it's the favorite child of council. Like, we dig history. We dig history and science. But not all of us avail ourselves to the history. Not all of us avail ourselves to the arts that we have here, or the Equity Commission. But we all enjoy our open space. So the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you have thoughts, make sure you reach out to the council. Not me, though.
Yeah, you don't really care about this new meeting schedule.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I'll be at Club Med at a thong-only resort. I'll send photos.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Other matters?
I do have one request. Shannon Haynes threw out a possibility this morning of a joint meeting with BOSAC and council and doing it on April 9th, which I think is kind of their lame duck session, and looking for some content as things are changing with elections and all that. So it's a Tuesday in April 9th, and typically the council work sessions start at 3 o'clock and go till, let's say about 5:30. And if there is a time that might work for that, for folks, or if there's another day altogether, that would be better. And if you don't want to think about it now, you can get back to me, but if you have initial thoughts, happy to hear them.
Great idea to meet with them.
Mhm.
Maybe I could be added to our scheduling poll.
Okay.
Again, will you send out, we're having a joint coffee talk with council and county. And it's at the what's that? Masonic Hall. And I think it's on the first of the second, and it's early in the morning.
Okay.
So if any of you guys want to show up, send out a kind of alert to a BOSAC, because it's kind of cool. I think it starts at like 8 o'clock.
Kelly and
So
Eric, though.
It'll be Kelly and Eric, yeah.
Okay,
So,
okay.
so yeah, we kind of get, nice to get some bodies there rather than, the same old county people, yeah.
8 o'clock isn't early in the morning.
It's 8 o'clock?
Is that pretty early?
Mere mortals.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm throwing.
Early morning coffee
Done
talk.
like 10,000 vert.
Other matters.
Has the McCain naming gone to council yet?
No, we are planning on that. It'll likely be, I think early March on the agenda.
Great.
Yep.
It's something Bobby brought up. I can't remember, Bobby, if it was December or November, but when we went through the winter trail conditions page and you made the point that it's kind of fat biking focused. I know an upcoming agenda item is going to be for us to talk about winter use and our management strategy. So maybe this fits into that, but I definitely have given this more thought and feel the same way Bobby does, that it shouldn't be through the lens of fat biking. It should be through the lens of snow conditions. There could be like a key at the bottom. It's like, if it's powder, it's gonna be hard to fat bike or whatever. But we talked about grooming, and one of the big benefits is that it improves accessibility for all user types. Yet here it's all about fat biking and what's groomed and how it is for fat biking. Those aren't congruent. So anyway.
Totally
food for
agree.
thought for the next.
And we have consultants working on a whole brand new look and feel to trail conditions. It's just, we've been slow to get them other bits and pieces of the website for us.
I don't think it's critical, but
Thank you.
Totally agree.
Anyone else?
Just based on the information we're getting, watching like the wolves migration into different watersheds, how involved are we going to be with that? Or when it like I know they're in our watershed now, they haven't found anything that crossed the I-70.
Nothing, yeah, south of I-70.
But yeah, that map came out yesterday or the day before.
Yep.
It just got me thinking about it.
I'm on one of their just email distribution lists, which anyone can sign up for, and they just send you any new news on the wolves. They're really trying to promote a lot of the education for folks, because I think people are frightened. I passed a woman at Muggins Gulch the other day who was wearing, she had her dog covered in bells, and I'm like, what are you doing? What's going on? She's like, I'm worried about the wolves. And I was like, I don't think you need to worry about that here, but I think education is key. And so they're really focused on putting out a lot of great education. The map too, I think, to alleviate a lot of concerns that people have. There's a lot of chatter on social media, which hopefully I think this map will eliminate some of that. But I encourage anyone to go to CPW, sign up for their email distribution list specifically to wolves. You can sign up for different topics, and it's great information they have.
Yeah, they're holding an event at the senior center in Frisco. If I can find it on my calendar coming up. CPW is.
And we do hold monthly meetings with our Golden Horseshoe Committee too, with our CPW local regional officer monthly every month. So we do meet with them and have contact with them.
It might be.
They have crossed I-70. They're
Well,
not
near-
here,
yeah,
but
yeah.
in the 10-mile range, right by Copper. Right.
The ones that were released or the ones that have migrated down?
They're the ones that are collared that they're following.
Well, that
Ones in,
could be
like,
some of the
Vale
migrated.
Village, there's one like in the Four Seasons, right at Vale Village, and then
That
crossed over, the map shows.
with all those fur coats, you're
Yeah.
gonna think it's an elk. Yeah.
I think it's a good point, though. I know it's not our role. It is still CPW's, but I think it could be a good consideration for open space town and county to consider in the future what we want to communicate or just re-communicate of something that's already been communicated, because many people, especially visitors, will be more familiar with our communication channels than CPW's.
And there's a new collaborative effort we're involved in right now, called the Summit Outdoor Coalition. Very much still trying to get its feet under itself. CPW is really encouraging areas around the state to form these regional partnership initiatives. So really be discussing wildlife issues regionally. And so within that region, there's also kind of some countywide activity. And so the Summit County Outdoor Coalition is really being spearheaded by the Blue River Watershed Group, who has some funding from CPW to kind of get this off the ground. And in their initial discussions about what's our focus, what do, we think that that kind of consistent messaging is really a need that we have right now. So we're hoping if we can develop this over the next year, because they have funding, that could be a really good kind of go-to place for a lot of this very good education and messaging,
And I
especially for our visitors.
think having us educated, because we're out in the community.
Mhm.
And I know particularly with hiking buddies,
Mhm.
they're likely to be concerned because they're typically a little older too. That is keeping us educated about what's going on would be helpful as a
Yep.
community outreach.
Absolutely.
And when's the thing at the center, senior center? Did you find it?
No.
It's February 16th at 5 o'clock at the senior center, I think.
Maybe the wolves will be scared of the drilling noises. A trail mix.
This is not what I was
Good one.
Great. Thank you.
Anything else?
And then I just have one last thing, Duke, on the winter grooming area. Alex and I, we have started putting some cameras out in that area. And then we're also going to install some out in French Gulch and just try to take a sampling of kind of winter trail users out there. And
Cool.
what users we are seeing out
Where'd
there.
you say? French Gulch and where?
French Gulch and we call it the extended Gold Run Nordic area where we've been grooming out there to actually see what type of users we were out there.
That'd be great.
And so we're just doing like a 2-week sample of different trails in that area so we can kind of bring that back to you.
And you'll also be cognizant of the conditions.
That's
In
what
other
we're-
words, if you want diversity of use, it depending on the snow, and I get it.
right. So that's what we're figuring out. We
Yeah.
hopefully feel like 2-week might be a good sample, but we're still going to be in that area as
Cool.
well.
Thank you.
If you want an exec session, updates only.
Would everybody like an exec session updates?
Let's hear where we're at. Great.
For me.
Perfect.
Oh, thanks, Alex. They're laminated. Harder for me to lose. Okay, I move that BOSAC go into executive session under CRS 2464024E for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategies for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators concerning a property the town may be interested in acquiring for open space purposes. Jeffrey Bergeron and Kristen Joyce, and Chris Tennell, and Duke Barlow, and Nikki LaRochelle, and Bobby Zanka. Sorry. I need a second, and then we go into exec session, and that's when I go through everybody that's here.
Yeah.
No,
I didn't hear my name.
David Rossi, I'm so sorry. It's a lot going on over here, okay? Sorry, Dave.
Lamination, really.
Yeah, it's too clear. Okay, Kristen seconded it. It is January 29th, 2024, and the time is 7:37. For the record, I am the presiding officer, Duke Barlow. As required by the open meetings law, this executive session is being electronically recorded. Also present at this executive session are the following persons: David Rossi, Tony Overlock, Ann Lowe, Mark Truckee, Julia Puster, Catherine King, Alex Stack, Jeffrey Bergeron, Kristen Joyce, Chris Tennell, Nikki LaRochelle, Bobby Zanka. Nailed it. This is an executive session under CRS section 2464024E for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategies for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators concerning property the town may be interested in acquiring. I caution each participant to confine all discussion to the stated purpose of the executive session and that no formal action may occur in the executive session. If at any point in the executive session, any participant believes that the discussion is going outside the proper scope of the executive session, please interrupt the discussion and make an objection. I always forget to thank like people that we kicked out.
Right. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Was that question or was that?
No, it
answered
was a
at-
comment from Neil that we should send the flagging back to the company.
Oh.
Okay, well,
I don't know.
Like,
I'm-
did Zara actually commission this art project? Boss came on the old.
Right.
It was a.
No, we